Imagine for a second that you are a billionaire.
Sounds nice.
Right. You have spent decades building an enterprise, or maybe you are managing a really complex, multi-generational family legacy.
The kind of wealth that needs serious protection.
Exactly. You are looking for the absolute safest, most discreet harbor on Earth to park your immense wealth. So you naturally turn to a prestigious Swiss private bank.
An institution whose very name is basically synonymous with global finance, opacity, and centuries of trust.
You sign the paperwork, you transfer your fortunes, and you feel entirely secure. But then you wake up one morning, you check the financial news, and you discover that the CEO of this very bank,
The person steering the ship.
the person holding your capital,
Yeah.
you find out they had a multi-million-dollar, years-long advisory relationship with the world's most notorious convicted financier.
It is the exact kind of headline that forces board members, shareholders, and, well, ultra-high net worth client to instantly reconsider their exposure.
Cool.
Because the reputational stakes in a scenario like this are just astronomical. In private banking, the product isn't just yield. The product is trust.
And the moment that trust is compromised by proximity to a massive scandal, the structural integrity of the entire institution is stress-tested in real time.
In a very public way.
We are so glad you are joining us today because our mission is to unpack the massive reputational and financial shockwaves currently hitting the Swiss private bank Edmond de Rothschild.
It's a fascinating situation.
It really is. We're drawing today from a brilliantly compiled recent Patreon post that synthesizes reporting from Bloomberg News, Reuters, Le Monde, and Forbes.
Great sources.
Yeah, and this deep dive is going to explore a really incredible intersection of high finance, opaque legal settlements, and the actual mechanics of corporate crisis management.
Because what we are examining today is a live case study in how global institutions react when the personal associations of a top executive threaten the brand itself. It is also a really stark look at the very long, very complicated shadow cast by the recently released Epstein files.
The DOJ drop.
Exactly. And how those files are actively forcing structural shifts in European banking governance right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. The immediate breaking news that has the financial world on edge is that the board of directors at Edmond de Rothschild has publicly announced they are stepping in.
Which is a huge move.
They are actively organizing to independently oversee the fallout regarding CEO Ariane de Rothschild's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
And you know, the specific language the bank used in that announcement is a critical starting point for us.
The wording matters.
It really does. The official statement noted that the board has been organized to independently monitor the situation, quote, in addition to the work and analysis carried out by management.
In addition to.
Yes, that phrasing is a classic corporate governance maneuver.
That feels like a very deliberate legal wedge being driven between the board and the C-suite.
Oh, it is entirely deliberate. When a crisis touches a chief executive officer directly, the board of directors cannot simply rely on internal compliance reports.
Because those reports are generated by people who report to that same CEO.
Exactly. They have to step in and build a visible firewall. By explicitly stating they are operating in addition to management, the board is signaling to regulators, and more importantly to the markets, that they are not just taking the executive's word for it.
They're asserting independent control.
To protect the institution's viability, yes.
And when we talk about Edmond de Rothschild, we aren't talking about some boutique firm taking a localized hit. A disruption here ripples across a massive footprint.
The scale is immense.
Just to give you an idea, they manage over 184 billion Swiss francs in assets.
184 billion.
Yeah. They employ more than 2,500 people, and they operate out of 28 offices worldwide.
Managing 184 billion Swiss francs means your entire business model relies on absolute stability and discretion.
You can't have surprises.
Right. So the board stepping in is fundamentally about projecting a steady hand at the wheel. It is an act of structural engineering.
How so?
They are trying to prove to the clients that the building itself is safe, regardless of what associations the person living in the penthouse may have cultivated.
That is a great way to put it. And that board firewall makes sense on paper, but when you actually look at the timeline of this relationship, the firewall starts to look more like a chain link fence.
It gets porous.
Very. The scrutiny we are seeing today stems directly from a massive document dump. On January 30th, the U.S. Department of Justice released a staggering collection of records under the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
Staggering is the right word.
We are talking about over 3 million pages of records related to the late financier. 3 million pages.
I mean, if you tried to print that out and stack it up, you'd be filling entire warehouses.
It's an ocean of data.
And when you sift through an archive of that magnitude, the timeline that emerges provides the most critical piece of context here.
The dates are what really caught my eye.
According to hundreds of emails found in this release, Epstein served as a close personal advisor to Ariane de Rothschild from 2013 until his arrest in July 2019.
That starting year, 2013, is what makes this so difficult to reconcile with modern corporate vetting.
It really is.
2013 is a full 5 years after Epstein's 2008 guilty plea for soliciting a minor for prostitution.
Right.
We're talking about the CEO of a major global financial institution engaging a convicted sex offender as a close personal advisor. I mean, how does a relationship like that bypass the basic compliance mechanisms of a Swiss bank?
That is the multi-billion-franc question the board is currently grappling with.
Seriously.
In the highest echelons of wealth management, the standard vetting processes that apply to mid-level executives or standard vendors, they often don't apply to the localized, bespoke networks of the ultimate decision makers.
The rules are different at the top.
The architecture of private banking relies heavily on specialized fixers, discrete introductions, and back-channel advisors. The timeline suggests that the perceived utility of Epstein's network outweighed the glaring reputational red flags of his criminal record.
And the reporting from Reuters brings some incredible specificity to how this dynamic functioned day to day. It wasn't just formal.
No, not at all.
The documents show the two coordinated numerous meetings at their respective residences in New York and Paris. Epstein also extended invitations for her to stay at his apartment.
So it wasn't just a matter of occasionally crossing paths at an industry conference. It indicates a level of operational comfort and regular, unmediated access. This was a sustained advisory relationship deeply embedded in the social and professional calendar of the CEO.
There's a specific text exchange Reuters highlighted from March 2019, which is just 4 months before Epstein's final arrest.
What did it say?
He sent a message saying he was in Paris. Her reply was, quote, "Really? I'm here too." It reads exactly like the kind of mundane text you would send to an old colleague you hadn't seen in a while.
The casual nature of that exchange is exactly what makes it so legally and reputationally significant. It paints a picture of a thoroughly normalized relationship.
Yeah, completely normal.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the social calendar is just the surface.
Right.
The board isn't organizing independent oversight because of text messages about being in Paris. They are stepping in because of the actual corporate business that was being conducted behind closed doors.
Which brings us to the financial mechanics of this relationship, because this is where the scale of the liability truly comes into focus.
This is the core of it.
What exactly was Epstein doing for a bank that manages 184 billion francs?
What's fascinating here is the shift from a personal advisory capacity to high-stakes corporate crisis management.
The pivot.
According to the documents, Epstein brokered a major settlement in 2015 between Edmund de Rothschild and the U.S. Department of Justice.
We need to dive deep into the mechanics of that 2015 settlement, because the numbers reported by Le Monde and Forbes are staggering.
The numbers are wild.
The bank was facing allegations from the DOJ that they had helped U.S. clients evade taxes. And for a Swiss bank, a DOJ tax evasion probe isn't just a legal hurdle.
No, it is an existential threat to their U.S. operations.
To resolve this, the bank ultimately paid a $45 million fine to the Department of Justice.
A $45 million penalty is a substantial punitive fine designed to send a message to the broader European banking sector.
But that's just the fine.
Right. The more crucial data point is the financial arrangement happening on the periphery of that settlement.
Because if we follow the money on the other side of the ledger, it gets deeply complicated. Epstein controlled a company called Southern Trust, which was based in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
A notable location.
Very. According to the reporting, Southern Trust received a massive $25 million payout under a consulting agreement that was linked directly to this 2015 DOJ deal.
Let's just pause and analyze the sheer mathematics of that arrangement.
Let's do it.
The bank pays a $45 million penalty to the United States government. Simultaneously, the consultant who brokers the settlement receives $25 million.
Which is...
That consulting fee is more than half the size of the actual punitive fine.
But hold on, that ratio doesn't fully track with how legal compliance or crisis management normally works.
Not even close.
If a major corporation faces a DOJ probe, they hire a white shoe law firm. They pay millions in billable hours, sure, but they don't pay a single individual consultant an amount equal to 55% of the federal fine.
It defies standard logic.
What specific leverage did Epstein possess to command a $25 million fee for a single settlement?
That is the core structural anomaly the reporting highlights. When an institution is willing to pay an intermediary $25 million to negotiate with the Department of Justice, they are not paying for standard legal counsel.
What are they paying for?
They are paying for shadow diplomacy. They are relying on that specific individual's hyper-connected network, their back-channel access, and their ability to navigate the incredibly opaque space between international banking secrecy laws and aggressive U.S. federal prosecutors.
And the use of the Virgin Islands as the jurisdiction for Southern Trust is also worth noting here.
Highly relevant.
It is a location well known for corporate opacity. It provides a mechanism to move massive sums of capital for quote-unquote consulting without the immediate granular oversight you might find in more traditional corporate jurisdictions.
Exactly.
It creates a very convenient architecture for a massive payout.
The structure of Southern Trust allowed the bank to engage in a highly lucrative, highly sensitive corporate crisis management partnership with a convicted felon, completely outside the traditional bounds of corporate oversight.
He wasn't just a guy at a party.
Epstein was deeply embedded in the bank's most sensitive regulatory challenge of the decade.
Which makes the bank's current public relations defense incredibly complex. We need to clearly look at the bank's official stance on all of this, because they are actively trying to thread a very difficult needle.
The institution is attempting to simultaneously acknowledge the undeniable documentary evidence while insulating the core banking operations from the resulting fallout.
Right. So the bank's stated position acknowledges that a professional relationship existed between CEO Ariane de Rothschild and Jeffrey Epstein.
They admit that much.
They further acknowledge that, over the years, this evolved into a more personal relationship.
Also admitted.
However, the bank firmly maintains that the CEO had absolutely no knowledge of Epstein's personal conduct, and the institution explicitly condemns the crimes for which he was convicted.
It is really worth pausing here to look at the legal boundaries of this specific reporting.
Let's be very clear about this.
In all the documents reviewed by Reuters and Le Monde, there is zero implication of criminal involvement by Ariane de Rothschild regarding Epstein's sex crimes.
Yes, none of the reporting suggests criminal complicity on her part regarding those specific offenses.
She is simply the latest addition to a very long, continually growing list of prominent global figures, politicians, business leaders, academics, who are suddenly facing intense public and corporate scrutiny simply because their historical ties to Epstein have been mathematically exposed by these DOJ document releases.
The paperwork is catching up to the network.
Exactly. The fundamental issue for the bank's board is not criminal liability for the CEO. It is a catastrophic failure of corporate judgment and the resulting reputational optics.
So we have an ongoing independent board oversight situation. We have a 3 million-page DOJ leak forcing these revelations into the light.
A massive leak.
We have texts about casual meetups in Paris, and we have a $25 million offshore consulting payout linked to a major tax evasion settlement.
It's a lot.
You would logically assume this PR nightmare would be driving clients away in droves.
That is the standard assumption in corporate crisis management, right? That severe reputational damage leads immediately to capital flight.
Naturally.
But the financial reality reported by Le Monde and Agence France Presse reveals a highly counterintuitive truth about the psychology of high net worth wealth management.
I was looking at the balance sheets Le Monde reported on, and the market reaction completely defies what you'd expect.
It really does.
The bank voluntarily announced that it has actually attracted roughly 10 billion Swiss francs in new client funds by 2025.
10 billion in new funds.
Unbelievable.
And they made a very specific, calculated choice to provide this figure right alongside their public statements about the board implementing new independent safeguards.
But is that 10 billion francs actually a sign of client trust in the wake of a scandal? Or is just institutional inertia? I mean, transferring billions of dollars out of a Swiss private bank is a massive logistical and legal undertaking.
It's not like closing a checking account.
Right. Are clients staying because they inherently trust the board's new firewall, or simply because the friction of leaving is too high?
That is a vital distinction. In the world of ultra-high net worth finance, capital is incredibly sticky.
Sticky capital.
It doesn't always flee at the first sign of a bad headline. What the bank is doing by broadcasting that 10 billion franc figure is using their balance sheet as a shield against the reputational damage.
They're pointing at the scoreboard.
Exactly. They are sending a very clear signal to the broader market. Yes, there are uncomfortable headlines. Yes, our board has to implement independent oversight, but look at the math. The global elite still trust our underlying infrastructure, and our core wealth management business remains robust.
It highlights a fascinating disconnect between public outrage and the cold mechanics of private banking. As long as the institutional safeguards are perceived to be strong, like the board visibly stepping in to monitor the situation, the clients seem willing to compartmentalize the CEO's personal advisory missteps.
They separate the architect from the architecture.
That is the perfect way to phrase it.
That is the reality of the sector. The board of directors is essentially proving to the clients that the vault is still secure, even if the executive suite is currently navigating a severe public relations storm. The $10 billion in new assets is the ultimate proof of concept for their crisis management strategy.
So what does this all mean for you as someone watching these global financial structures react in real time? Let's take a step back and synthesize the journey we have been on today.
It's been a ride.
We started with a staggering 3 million-page document dump from the Department of Justice on January 30th under the Transparency Act. Out of that massive archive, hundreds of emails surfaced detailing a 6-year relationship between a convicted financier and the CEO of a Swiss bank that manages 184 billion francs.
We examined the casual texts coordinating meetups in Paris, but we also dissected the heavy machinery of the relationship.
A settlement.
A 2015 DOJ settlement over tax evasion brokered by Epstein, which resulted in a $45 million fine for the bank and a massive $25 million payout to Epstein's offshore Virgin Islands company, Southern Trust.
And it all culminates in a board of directors actively scrambling to maintain public trust. They're carefully crafting legal statements about independent monitoring in addition to management, while simultaneously pointing to 10 billion francs in new funds to prove to the world that the ship isn't sinking.
If there's a core lesson to take away from this deep dive, it is about the dangerously blurred lines in the opaque world of high net worth finance.
The lines are practically non-existent.
The boundaries between personal networking, back-channel corporate advisory roles, and massive institutional liability are not nearly as rigid as we are led to believe. A casual text message can exist in the exact same timeline as a $25 million offshore consulting payout.
Such a stark contrast.
And an institution can face the most intense reputational scrutiny of its existence while simultaneously attracting billions in new investments.
And it's a total paradox of modern global finance. And it leaves me with one final lingering thought for you to mull over as you digest this story.
Let's hear it.
We know that the DOJ just dumped over 3 million pages of Epstein's records on January 30th.
Right. And we know that this specific release is already forcing the board of a 184 billion franc Swiss bank to launch independent oversight just to protect its standing.
Yes.
So the real question is, what other global corporations, prominent politicians, and billionaires are quietly having their crisis PR teams and corporate lawyers comb through those exact same 3 million pages right now, waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Given the sheer volume of the release and the breadth of that particular network, the mathematical probability of further institutional fallout is incredibly high.
It certainly is. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It is always a fascinating exercise to unpack these complex financial stories with you.
Thank you for listening. Keep asking the tough questions about the structures around you, and we will catch you next time.
Take care, everyone.